Let's start for the details this afternoon. We are starting from the Upper West region, and rather on a very sad note, because the Director General of the Police Criminal Investigation Department is this afternoon leading a team of forensic investigators to Jirapa in the Upper West region, where police continue to expand the scope of its investigations into the brutal murder of owner of the Dubai, Jirapa Dubai, if you like, Eric Johnson, a business mogul and CEO of Royal Cozy Hill Hotel, also known as Dubai, Jirapa Dubai. Now, this incident happened last night, and the police director of the CID is leading a team to unravel the circumstances leading to the murder of the former hotel mogul. So this is what we know so far. They've picked up 7 workers of the hotel as investigations into the incident expand. And they include, one, we have some workers of the hotel. Kumbata Kwaku, he was the first to be arrested. And Dukuri Foster, also arrested by the police. Brian Makasim, Bayo Fellis, Michael Klugi. Individuals who were arrested early on today, and this afternoon the police updated the list of those they have arrested so far. The number is now 7. That also includes Charles Tozi and Favor Nwagbe. So these are the individuals who've been arrested by the police in connection with the brutal murder of the CEO of Cozy Lodge, also known as Jirapa Dubai. And according to reports, the murder was committed in Mr. Johnson's private residence, which is also on the same property as the hotel. And shortly we'll be speaking to Dr. Jones Opokuwari. He's a criminologist from the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology. Right now, let me take you to Jirapa because my colleague Rafiq Salam is our man who is joining me via phone. Rafiq, good afternoon. Welcome to the Pulse. Rafiq Salam, if you can hear me, good afternoon, welcome to the Pulse. You've been on the beat since news broke of the murder of the businessman yesterday, and this afternoon you are at Jirapa. Bring us up to speed. What has been happening in the last few hours? So we're trying to reconnect with Rafiq for him to tell us what is happening in Jirapa. Remember that the police CID is leading a team to the community to start investigation, to try and unravel circumstances leading to the murder of the businessman. Already, the police have announced the arrest of 7 individuals. These are workers of the hotel, and as part of their preliminary probe into the matter. And 7 have already been arrested. I went through the names for you: Kumbata Kwaku, Dukuri Foster, Brian Makasim, Bayo Fellis, Michael Kluge. These are the individuals who've been arrested. They are all workers of the Cozy Hill Hotel in Jirapa, and the police is expanding. So before we bring you Rafiq, let me go on Zoom right now and bring on Dr. Jones Opokuwari. He is a criminologist with the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology. Dr. Opokuwari, good afternoon. Welcome to the Pulse.
Good afternoon to you, Ayrton. Good afternoon to your viewers as well.
Great. So looking at the sequence of events as reported by the police, 7 people arrested so far, and these are workers of the hotel. Is it standard practice?
Yes, definitely. I think that is standard practice because, in criminal investigation, there's something we call 6 degrees of separation. What that means is that, normally in layman's language, you say a friend of a friend is a friend of a friend. So a lot of the times in criminal investigation, when we have to do such kind of investigations, we have to look at those that are very close. And looking at the nature of the kind of murder we are talking about, it presupposes and suggests that this may be people who are close to the man and probably has some form of an axe to grind to the man. So I think that what the police has done, it's something that is standard practice, and it is good that the police has moved in to do this investigation.
Right. Hold it there for me, Dr. Jones Opokuwari. Let me bring in Rafiq Salam, our reporter who is on the ground to tell us the very latest. Rafiq, you're welcome to the Pulse.
Thank you very much.
Right. So all morning we've been talking about what the police is doing, what the DISEC is doing But you've been on DB since yesterday. Tell us, what is the latest on the ground?
The latest is that the craft CID team that has been deployed by the Inspector General of the Ghana Police Service, Dr. George Akubo Adampare, arrived in the Upper West region this morning, and then after which they headed to Jirapa. So we got to Jirapa, we were told that they were inside the private residence of Eric Johnson, which was close to the public. And so we of a Cuban coming from the residence. But what we saw was that there was a policeman who was peeping through the window of the gate, trying to see whatever that we were doing. From there, we went inside the Royal Police Hills Hotel itself, where the workers were, and then we saw that the place looked deserted and almost looked like a ghost town. And then nobody actually was there except the few workers that were there. So we came down, we tried to speak to some members of the public, talking about some leadership of some group and some workers in Jirapa, and they were really disappointed in an anger, and then also grieving over the loss of a man they call philanthropist extraordinaire, and also even some pupils from the public schools were really not happy, saying that they will not be able to see their uncle again. And so that is really the sad story at Jirapa. And Jirapa for now is mourning, Jirapa is grieving, and then it's enveloped with a lot of sadness.
So let me ask you, Rafiq, we have personnel of the Ghana Police Service. They've come from Accra. Does it suggest that they've taken over the investigation for the local police?
Yes, for now, the local police, they started the investigation and then it moved to the regional crime unit, and then the from Accra also came and took over. But all these things they will do it, in collaboration with each other. And so for now, the Accra team are taking over the investigation to improve on what their subordinates from the region has been able to do in this particular case. But for now, the CID are strongly in charge of the case in the region.
All right. And again, for those who are joining us for the very first time and hearing this news, walk us through the sequence of events. In fact, we've been told that the assailant used a ladder, and as I come, he managed to get into the private residence of the business person. And after, he drove out of the compound in the deceased vehicle. Walk us through the sequence of events as you have been told.
It appears it's like a Hollywood movie. When we had this information that this alleged or this unknown assailant went into the compound using a ladder and then got into the private mansion of Eric Johnson, met him in his home using a Mastercard, met him when he was only wearing towel, he was armless, and he was able to use a sharp implement allegedly, and also stab him multiple times on the abdomen, on the chest, and also on the and also some parts of his hand. And later, he used a push key of the car of Eric and then moved out. When he got to the gate, it was the security man that informed and who also helped him for him to come to town and then jammed the car around the youth center. And that was exactly what happened.
But has
if not the work of a professional, you wouldn't have been able to do that because they knew that the work of a professional who was well executed.
I know it's early days though, but in the police preliminary comments, have they come to some establishments whether this may constitute robbery or contract killing? Has they come to any such definition?
For now, the police have heard it about whatever that transpired on Sunday, and they are keeping their cars closer to their chest. It is not going to give them any information regarding a particular issue. And that's why I even told you that when we got to the private residence of Eric Johnson, it was close to the public. I could see a dozen of these men that were around, and also the CIDC were also inside doing their work. And so let me also say that this incident actually took place at the private residence of Eric Johnson and not the hotel. And so, but somehow it appears it's affecting the business of the hotel because the atmosphere there look like the hotel has been rejected and also look like a ghost town.
Yes, and I was coming to that, whether work is ongoing at the hotel or it's been suspended for now, and what is the general mood in the town of Jirapa?
The people of Jirapa, like I told you, that in every grief, and that was starving. The people are really not really happy, and for them, they think that if they had a opportunity of doing this known assailant, they themselves would have been dealt for another person. And so for them, they think that the staff is not only about Eric Johnson, but the whole of Jirapa and the airport entirely. All
right. And what about the regional, the District Security Council, the Regional Security Council? Any comment from them?
Just 2 minutes ago, I spoke to the Minister of Security, Nicholas Koyuri, who also doubles the Musek chief, head of the Musek in the municipality. He told me that it's a tough situation, but he has started to do a thorough job before that the perpetrators of this starting like heinous crimes are brought to book.
All right. Rafi, before I let you go, are they hoping to do a media brief after their tour of the facility?
For now, as I told you, that they have played their cards close to their chest. They are not telling anybody anything about that. They will only tell you that we are still investigating and that nothing has been said to the media or public about this particular incident. The information that we are gathering about is from the people who are closer to the hotel and also closer to the family. They are giving us this information regarding what will happen.
All right, thank you very much, Rafik. And the police, in their latest update, put a number of arrests at 7. And these are all workers of the facility. So clearly they are doing their own sorting and screening, and then to establish whether any of them may have a motive regarding the matter in question. But what about the family of the deceased? What are they saying? All right, so Rafik Salam is gone off the line, and we'll bring him back as and when it's necessary. But for now, that is the situation. The police latest statement on this matter is that 7 individuals have been arrested, and these 7 are all workers of the Cozy Hill Hotel, also known as Jirapa Dubai, and they are, doing their own sorting and investigation. There is a team led by the director of CID. They went to Jirapa this afternoon to take over investigation from the local police, and then we'll keep an eye on this matter. But let me again bring in Dr. Jones Opokuwa, who is a criminologist with the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology. So, Doctor, you heard Rafik narrate what he's been told and what appears to be the sequence of events leading to the murder of the businessman. Would this qualify as a contract killing?
Well, it seems to have all the trappings of contract killing, or somebody who, as it were, and as I've already indicated, seems to have an axe to grind with a man. Because now, for every crime, especially for every murder, you have to look at the ingredients of the murder. For instance, was anything taken away from the crime scene? If there is something taken away from the crime scene, like valuables, then you could suggest that maybe it's a robbery gone wrong or something like that. But the case that we are looking at seems to suggest that this was somebody that actually went into the place and just attacked the man. So, for instance, if you look at even the murder weapon, normally, if it is robbery, people will normally not go with, let's say, knives and those kind of, dangerous implements. They may go with guns and all that. So, if a person has to go with knife and have to stab somebody multiple times, then it suggests that this probably is an individual who have some kind of axe to grind with a person, probably might have done that with so much emotions and anger. So it seems to have all the trappings of serial killing, whether the person acting individually or, let's say, singly, or is also acting in conjunction with others. It seems to meet the criteria for some form of contract killing.
So with this at the back of your mind, how should the police go about this in terms of their investigation and to bring the culprit to book?
Yes, I think the police have done well. I mean, they've started the process in a very much decent manner. As I initially said, for such kind of cases, especially for murders like this, you have to apply the principles of 6 degrees of separation. You need to first talk to people who are close to the victim. So it's very important that the police started with the workers, because I mean, obviously these are people the man actually interacts with in his daily activities and all that. And now, what I will also suggest is that the police must extend, the search. It may not necessarily be only those who he's working with, probably friends, some other friends, or somebody might even be jealous of him and the kind of investment, he may have made in that part of the country. And personally, I have been to Jirapa Dubai, which was last October, and Elton, trust me, this is a very nice edifice the man has put in that area. You may not know. Somebody might even feel jealous about that. So the police is not supposed to deal with only, the workers. They have to expand the search to include even friends and even family members, because you may not know. Because they had this kind of, all the characteristics of what serial killing and murder is. I suggest that we cannot only limit it to people who he's working with, but also expand the search to include people who are so much close, including friends and even family members.
There's this angle to the story about the security of the place. You said you've been there before, and from the stories that we've been told, the deceased lived just not far from the hotel facility. Now, for those who've been there, according to them, they had an elaborate security system to the extent that even accessing the private residence required the use of a key card. Now, this person went through all of this, had access to the private residence. After the murder, he drove out of the compound. The security, on duty, allowed the person because he was driving the vehicle belonging to the deceased. What does this say about the kind of security arrangement we have in some of these places in terms of, our personal protection?
Yes, when I was there, in fact, I lived there for, I think, 4 days, and all the rooms had these security, keys. Obviously, even within the compound, if you want to even access even the safari and all those, the security was quite tight, because at every point in time, when you move in, people are there watching your every move and that. So in terms of the security and the safety of the place, I am quite surprised somebody could actually, trespass into the man's house. And that is what gives me on the indication that this probably is an inside job, and this probably might be somebody so close to the man. Because, Elton, let's be honest, if somebody is not so close to you, the person might not necessarily even know all the places, all the routine activities you engage in, even the configuration of your home. Because from what Rafik said, this may be somebody who have gone into the house, trespassed the place with a ladder, and had some form of a master key. And now, if you are not so close to the man and you don't know the configuration of his home, how would you even know that this is the exit and even the entry points to the home, for which will give you some kind of easy access to the person? That is why I'm saying that looking at the ingredients of this murder, it raises more questions. And that is why I've suggested that the police will have to expand the search, because it tells me that the person who is responsible for the murder of this man is not so far from him. Therefore, we have to be very careful and be more attentive to the details.
And if this is a contract killing, then the next question surely will be, as a country, have we gotten to that stage? I remember some time back, the former Deputy Managing Director of the Ghana Commercial Bank, Wojo Frimpong, was murdered. The claim was that it was a contract killing. Up to now, there's not been a conclusion on that matter. This is on our hand. If this is indeed constitute contract killing, then as a country, has it come to say, or something we believe in it, but we are here to appreciate it?
Well, I think it's something that is in the country. People do that. I mean, even at a very localized level. Sometimes because some of these cases involve, let me say, very prominent and high-profile people, that is why it becomes something like a hula baloo. But look, even at a localized level, based on some of the issues that we know and we deal with because of the sector we work with, you get to the point to know that there are even times that just giving people loans, and when it is time for people to even repay you,
yeah,
people can even go contract people to come and clear you off because they don't want to pay back the loans. So these are things that are there. But you see, the problem is that because over the period we've had this penchant to politicize crime, especially murders, and make it look as if these are political crimes. It makes it very difficult for us to appreciate that this is something that is happening in the country, and therefore this is something that we have to put our foot on. So even when it is clear and looking at us within the eyes, it becomes very difficult for us to accept. But the truth of the matter is that this is something that has been with us for a long time. And even within the local context, as I've said, people have gone through, people have become victims of such vicious acts. And it is something that we are still grappling with as a country in terms of its appreciation.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Jones Opokuwari. And on your screen, I mean, some of the issues that, or some of the cases of murder that some of them, conclusion is yet to be established on. We have the former member of parliament for Bokwa North, J.B. Dankwedu, who was murdered at his home on February 9, 2016. The trial is still ongoing. The suspect, also known as Sexy Gogome, is facing trial. There's also a call here for the former member of parliament for Infanseman in the central region. He was also murdered on October 9, 2020. The suspect, they've been sentenced. And then Professor Emmanuel Yaubene, former lecturer, University of Ghana Law School, September 12, 2020. Lead suspect died in police custody. And I also mentioned about the former deputy managing director of the Ghana Commercial Bank, Rojo Frimpong. Conclusion has yet to be established on this matter. And as you heard from Dr. Jones Opokuwari, we appears to be living with this phenomenon of contract killing. It's just about you protecting yourself. So this is the pause. With me, Elton Brobe. More issues on this Rafik Salam is still in the community. We'll bring you more as and when we have it. But this afternoon, the chairman of the National Media Commission, Yaboedu Ayeboafo, has come under intense criticism from the media fraternity for describing the decision by the Ghana Journalists Association to blacklist 2 politicians accused of aiding attacks on journalists as dysfunctional and unproductive. The GJA declared a media blackout on MP for Ewutu Senya East, Bevisawa Kumsi, who was also the Minister for Fisheries and Aquaculture, and a Member of Parliament for Yendi Farouk Aliu Mahama, both accused of assaulting journalists from Cape FM and CTTV in the heat of the MPP parliamentary primaries. The NMC chair proposed victims rather explore legal avenues to fight such acts of impunity against journalists.
To the recent puerile, vicious, and violent attacks on journalists for exercising their primary obligation of informing our people. This has resulted in the equally unilateral decision of the GJA in calling for a boycott or blackout on such people. While the approach is popular, it is dysfunctional. Many years ago, I courted displeasure and contempt when the Ashanti Region chapter of the GJA issued such an order against the Vice Chancellor of K University, Professor Ellis Otu. As is usual with some of our journalists, my dissent was taken as being too known. I was taken to the cleaners and described in very pejorative ways as a turncoat, inferimu, treacherous, traitor against journalistic interests. I still hold the position that whilst it is disheartening for journalists to be attacked violently, the unilateral resolve to black out or boycott is not the most productive reaction. We cannot fight impunity with impunity. I will support any effort to ensure that justice is done against all such deviant acts rather than blackout or boycott. We must follow the rule of law and the due process. Condemning such acts is in order, but not the blackout or boycott.
Well, the president of the Ghana Journalists Association, Albert Jumfo, shocked and disappointment in the comments of the NMC chair described the posture of Yabodo Ayabuafo as unfortunate, adding the GJ exhausted all relevant processes before issuing its blackout directive.
What has the NMC done to promote and ensure independence of the media and the freedom of the media in this country? You abandon your call for your constitutional mandate, and a journalist, a veteran journalist for that matter, is part of us. Today, you are heading a state institution or a state organization which is supposed to be independent, will now disagree with the entire media body. We have 500 bodies that came together to make this decision. So if you disagree with even DJ, you disagree with, are you saying you also disagree with media organization, disagree with Giba, disagree with Breaker? It is saying and it's unfortunate that comment is it is the responsibility of the NMC to provide a enabling environment for journalists. After that, we see NMC sanctioning journalists, media houses, go and apologize, go and do this. One at all, NMC sanctioning perpetrators for attack on journalists. He will tell you that all this report didn't come before them. He will say that all this report didn't come before them. Meanwhile, during the invasion of the new studio, nobody reported they were the first people to issue the statement. But nobody reported to them. When politicians, government officials attack, you sit down there and say you are waiting for reports to act as NMC, which is supposed to protect journalists. So if you can't protect journalists and you cannot ensure a safety enabling environment for journalists, why would we disagree if we are taking abnormal decisions?
So let's broaden the conversation. Dr. Abena Enimwa-Yebuabanin is a senior lecturer at the Department of Communication Studies at the University of Ghana, and she joins us via Zoom. Doctor, you're welcome to the pause here on Joy News. And if you can kindly unmute for me. Right. Doctor, you're welcome to the pause here on Joy News, and if you can unmute for me. Right, so Dr. Benin, if you can hear me, this is the pause, you're welcome. So we'll try and re-establish contact with Dr. Abena Enimwa-Benin with the University of Ghana School of Communication Studies. So Doctor, you're welcome to the pause here on Joy News. Right, so we are looking at the comments by the President of the Ghana Journalists Association, and of course the counter-reaction from the chairperson of the National Media Commission. Yabodo Ayabuafo is of the view that you cannot fight impunity with impunity, and that the GJ should resort to legal process to seek redress. The GJ is of the view that what the position is taking, that is blacklisting politicians, is the way out, at least for now, whilst they look at other options. So we are looking at the two issues, whether or not it is the right way to go, and whether the NMC has a position with the sound judgment in the position espoused by the chairperson of the National Media Commission. Let me try and see if I can establish communication with Dr. Abena Banan. Doctor, you're welcome to the pause here on Joy News. Yes, and if you can unmute for me, Doctor.
You're unable to hear me.
I can hear you loud and clear. It's perfect now. And it's a pleasure to have you on the pause here this afternoon as we look at the work of the media. Now, you have been following some of the decisions taken by the President of the Ghana Journalists Association. Two decisions taken on the Minister for Fisheries and Aquaculture, and of course, the Member of Parliament for Yendi, Farouk Aliu Mahama. The GJ position is that black them out from the media space until there's finality brought on the matters in question. Is this the way to go in terms of protecting journalists in the line of their duties?
Well, perhaps before I comment, just to take our minds back to some of the discussions we had in April 2023, when the Department of Communication Studies issued the State of the Ghanaian Media Report. Chapter on the safety of journalists reported that at least some 38% of those who had been sampled had experienced attacks in the line of work. An even bigger number, nearly 70% of those sampled, said they were aware of colleagues who had experienced attacks in the line of work. Altogether, therefore, quite a good number of the journalists sampled expressed feelings of insecurity. They generally felt unsafe for doing the work of journalists in the country. If we remember these discussions, then perhaps we would see why we are where we are. Report after report has suggested that the rates of attacks on journalists for doing their work, the rates are increasing, but the action that you would want to see to make a statement to perpetrators that this will not be countenanced, such action doesn't seem to be as swift nor even existent in quite a number of instances. And so if you have a situation where journalists are being attacked, they don't feel enough action exists, action by states, action even sometimes by their media organizations, because we found that there isn't quite a lot of support for these journalists when they've been attacked. And so perhaps if we have that context, we would understand why the association has gotten to where it has, where it thinks, you know what, they're not going to solve the problems for us until we take charge and try to deal with it ourselves. And so perhaps we see why we have arrived where we are today. Is it the best option? Is it the only option?
That is exactly my question, whether this is the best approach.
I want to say that I can see where both parties are coming from. As I've just shown you, the DJ has reasoned, perhaps is overwhelmed and frustrated, tired, and think this is the only way to go. But I see reason also in the argument by the NMC chair. He raises the question of can you deal with impunity with impunity? And that is something for us to think about. There is also the other issue actually about compliance. So you see, when you do a media blackout, a news blackout, ideally you should have everybody rallying and being willing to say, yes, we are going to fight this with the news blackout. Again, as we reported in our State of the Ghanaian Media Report, there's quite a bit of political capture in our media space. So there are quite a number of media houses that are politically exposed or colored. They either belong to NPP persons or NDP persons. So this blackout, its effectiveness, if you wanted everybody to rally, chances are that you may not be able to achieve that, because quite a number of the media houses belong in a certain, if you like, group that they wouldn't be minded to collaborate with the GJ on this directive. So it makes the
enforcement difficult.
A bit difficult, because you wouldn't have everybody rallying to say this is what we are going to do together. But I can quite understand why the DJ has gotten to where it has gotten to.
Right, so
journalists are feeling unsafe, and there doesn't seem to be a lot of commitment to acting on it. Even the Office of the Mechanism for the Safety of Journalists that was put together by the the National Media Commission, the Ministry of Information, etc. when we did the report, one of the things was that a visit to that place didn't seem as though it was very, very functional. So if that was supposed to be the place for seeking remedy, and it is not that active, then when journalists go there with their complaints, not much result is going to be seen. And we know also that the turnaround time in our law courts can be very long. And so again, when a journalist has been attacked, the results may not turn around that quickly.
All right.
So I can't see where the journalists are coming from, but I do also see the queries that have been raised by the NMC chair.
Yes, I'll bring you to that, but let's stay a little longer on the potency of the GJA directive. And you made a very good point. The GJA itself is an association. Not all members, not all journalists belong to the Ghana Journalists Association. So for the directive may not have its full effect in terms of its application, when some may be of the view that I'm not a member of the GJA, and for that reason, I do not come under the directive of the GJA. And so enforcement becomes an issue. But on the other side of it, and going back to your report on the state of the Ghanaian media, the people you interviewed and said that they had been attacked in the line of their duty, did they get compensation? Was there finality brought on that particular matter? Because I'm asking this question because the GJA president said that when the alleged attack was visited on the City TV journalist, when he called the police officer in charge, the police officer told him that he saw everything and that they were going to prosecute the member of parliament, that the IGP had instructed them to do so. From that time up to now, there's not been any movement on that particular matter. So how do we get to a point where people respect the work of journalists? Vis-a-vis looking at the fact that the GJA directive may not be so potent after all, because it's just an association and not everybody belongs to the GJA.
You are right in the background you gave. You referred me back to my report, and so
yes.
Perhaps let me go back. So we asked journalists in that chapter, we asked journalists and what they think about the posturing towards the safety of journalists, whether, for instance, if we took the security services, did they consider this as a priority? The body language we got from the security services is the safety of journalists a big deal. To them, about 65% of the journalists said, no, we don't think so. And if you took the judiciary, again, if you ask journalists, do you think that the judiciary prioritizes issues of safety of journalists? Nearly half of them said, no, we don't think the judiciary prioritizes the safety of journalists. So we've come from a place where a story has been building up. A story that has attacks, a story that have attacks for which redress do not seem to come, and a story that then means that perhaps for some elements in Ghana, a culture of impunity is growing where they think you can attack journalists, there will be no consequences for doing so, and so you're free to do that. And so we just have to keep reminding ourselves about that, so that even those journalists who are not members of the GJA or journalists working with, say, partisan political media, and therefore whose obligations may not be to the GJA but to their owners or the political parties, etc. Even those journalists should want to join the drive to fight for the safety of journalists. I'm just not too sure, though, that the blackout is in itself and on the face of it a full-on solution. I've raised some of the queries.
Right.
In addition, so you want to look at the fact that really we want to promote free expression. The blackout actually means also silencing certain voices, certain stories that ought to be heard because a certain person is part of that story. But I don't think we have very simple answers on this issue. I think that we all need to be thinking through these things a bit more. What really are the best options, for instance, so that we fast-track legal redress, so that justice is seen to be done when journalists are attacked.
And what's your suggestion, Doctor?
Say again?
I asked of your suggestions. I mean, if the blackouts may not achieve the desired result, what then should be the option?
I do wish, for instance, that the state empowered Office of the Mechanism for the Safety of Journalists would be seen to be more proactive. At the time we collected data on the report, we didn't see too much happening there. I do hope that at least by releasing the report and signaling that attention, a lot more focus is going into making that place work, so that when a journalist is attacked, they know that I can get action when I go and report it here, because the police is looking there, the judiciary is set up to fast track cases that are reported through that office, etc. If we have that system well set up, then it's easier for journalists to know that we can seek redress when we go to these places. Because you see, individual journalists and even individual media houses may not always be able to pursue redress through the law courts also. It can be expensive, it can be time consuming, it can be resource consuming. And so we need that integrated mechanism like the one that the NMC and the Ministry of Information set up to be functional, to be proactive, so that it becomes that middle ground for journalists who have been attacked to go to and seek redress.
Let me give you two classical examples, and then perhaps you can tell me whether the position adopted by the GJ addresses this very concern. So I have two colleagues of mine. One was assaulted by political party thugs after the 2012 elections. That person, as we speak right now, cannot work. He's virtually bedridden. The other one went to cover a demonstration at the police headquarters. He was beaten and had head injuries. In fact, he's been going through series of surgeries. And even as we speak, he is still not out of it yet. These two, virtually, they may not have what it takes to work and work fully because of the assault that they were subjected to by thugs belonging to political parties and alleged police officers. One, the matter has been in court for years. There's not been any finality. In fact, the police at some point came out to say that they were unable to produce the CCTV camera that will bring to fore the evidence that will suggest that indeed the reporter was beaten by these police officers. So when you have a classical case where the state in itself is unable to bring some finality and compensation to these individuals who, as we speak, cannot even work fully, then it begs the question, what then do we do if the GGA position is also not feasible?
I just will have to go back to the state having to set up and doing its work, and civil society, people like yourself and myself, pushing them a bit more to do the work. We've raised some of the challenges that the GGA brings, and they are very valid challenges. It is not in any way on my part to say that I don't see reason in where they've gotten to. I totally can see their frustration. There is research evidence that gives reason for journalists in the country to say we are tired, we are being attacked, etc. So there's evidence enough. But we do need perhaps to strengthen our opportunities to use the legal remedies. The fiat, or what's the name for it, that the GJA president would work, but to some extent, because of some of the things I have told you, that not all the journalists are going to feel obligated, not all of them are going to mobilize and rally behind it. And so while it may be effective to some extent, in the longer term, civil society and all of us ought to push harder and ensure that the more institutionalized systems for seeking redress are better instituted and promoted and used to bring solutions to some of the problems that we have. You mentioned your two colleagues. They are fortunate to be working perhaps in a media organization like yours, and so maybe there is some support. We actually saw that a lot of the media houses, there even isn't any support at all for them. And so if the journalists went on the field and were attacked, they were left to their own devices as to how to survive. As a country, this is not good. This is not okay for the way we are treating the very people who are supposed to bring us the information by which we make the decisions with which to live our lives. It is not okay. Our leaders, everybody within the media space should be worried. And so perhaps an opportunity to join the call to say that let those who are mandated to deal with these problems sit up. The NMC will look to you as mediators, as regulators, the Ministry of Information, other regulatory agencies, state entities, etc., and the Office for the Mechanism of the Safety of Journalists especially. We need to see that it is working so that people can trust that when they are attacked and they take their reports there, they will see finality, they will see justice, and that justice would have been obvious to have been being done.
And as a watcher yourself, do you think that the NMC has done enough in terms of protecting and promoting the work of journalists? I mean, I understand that per their mandate, they are supposed to, register, regulate, and monitor activities of the media. For a section of the media, fraternity, any case brought against the media house before the NMC, you can best be assured that the NMC will rule against the media. And some have even questioned how the appointment of certain persons to the board of the National Media Commission when they have political biases.
Well, you bring such a big discussion in this issue. I think that we need an even bigger platform to discuss exactly how do we make the NMC more functional, more impactful. We've had quite a number of discussions with the NMC. We know that they have real constraints that may stop them from serving as the way by law, etc. We expect them to function and to serve our interests. So those constraints perhaps may be the reasons that will be cited for whatever challenges we have with the NMC. Is that enough? No, because we do have to serve our journalists better. And so perhaps there is more that can be done with the NMC. When you read, again, I take you back to that same report. One of the things we had asked was who journalists thought was proactively fighting for the safety of journalists. NMC didn't come up. The name that came up was the Media Foundation for West Africa, for other entities that came up. NMC's name was not one of those in the forefront. That itself is a signal that there are challenges that we need to pay attention to. And you see, we have to put our resources where we want them to work well for our interests. If you continue draining the NMC as we hear they are resource drained, then perhaps we'll continue to have for want of a better expression, the reasons we get when we raise questions about our expectations of their functioning.
Right. Thank you very much for your time this afternoon. It's been a pleasure speaking to you. Dr. Abena Enimwaye Wabenim. He is a senior lecturer at the Department of Communication, University of Ghana. And folks, there's a reason why the work of the media is given prominence in the 1992 Constitution. The Constitution described the work of the media as a fourth estate of the realm. All we are asking for is that you allow us to do our work and do it in peace. This is The Pulse. My name is Elton Brobe. We'll take a short break. When we come back, I'll take you to the voter regime because those who were displaced by the recent flooding are unhappy that several months on they are still living in tents.
Disaster occurred in September last year, precisely September 15. We're in February 2024, nearly 5 clear months after the disaster began. And clearly, government does not empathize with the plight of the people.
You're welcome back to The Pulse with me, Elton Brobe. Now, let's move to your election headquarters. And last week, the MPP flag bearer and Vice President Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia outlined his vision for the country in his bid to convince Ghanaians to vote for him at this year's general elections. he has since been the subject of discussions in both traditional and social media. Yes, we know him as the vice president and to some extent as a first deputy governor of the central bank sometime back before he was roped in by Nana Addo Dankwa. So how well do we know him beyond this, especially as he's likely to be the main candidate challenging John Dramani Mahama for the presidency? That's why we brought in Dr. H.C. Kanku, a lecturer with Unimac, that's GJA, who has written a book on the man. He's also with the political science department with the University of Ghana, right? All right, so let's not, he joins me in the studio for a discussion. Then the book, we are told, is coming up next month. Doctor, you're welcome.
Thank you very much.
So let me zoom straight to the issue. Dr. Bawumia, last week, all of us glued to our TV and radio, so we listened to him for close to 2-3 hours. Now, what kind of image did he put out there? And did he frame it so well?
Yes, so this was a gentleman. The broad context within which the conversation or the speech was held is that he's a certain vice president who is also going in as the presidential candidate of a different of his incumbent party. And so the image that he tried to portray was somebody who was in control of himself, in control of his policies, and tried to also sell his vision. The image of a political candidate is predicated on different things. One of it includes the person's character. The other includes the person's composure. The other includes the person's values and also the person's experiences, as well as the person's vision as well. So in terms of his character and his values, one of the ideological or the philosophical strengths or basis that he uses to frame his image is one of inclusive growth through digitalization. In terms of his values, he portrayed himself as somebody who was very hardworking and very much involved in policy formulation as far as the government is concerned. But then at the same time, he also tried to frame himself as somebody, a man of possibilities, and tried to enjoin Ghanaians to join him in promulgating an era of widespread possibility in this country where we'll be able to take advantage of our talents and our resources in order to break barriers. And then the last thing that he predicated his image on was his political philosophy of digitalization, and talked about the fourth industrial revolution, which he called on Ghanaians to join him on if he was elected.
But there's been reaction after the speech. And we'll go on and talk about the other matters. But in terms of how he portrayed himself, the kind of image he sold to Ghanaians, and the reaction that you heard, I mean, how did he come out? Has he committed political suicide, or he scored points?
Okay, suicide by doing what?
In terms of, I mean, the message not going the way it's supposed to have been. And I'm asking whether, by virtue of the fact that he portrayed himself in a certain light, and the reaction that you've seen, has it been a political suicide, or you think that he scored points to enable him to advance his cause forward?
Yes, no, thank you very much. I think that he was able to have the kind of effect that he wanted. At the end of the day, he's part of a current administration. And so he needed to make that distinction between himself and whatever had been going on within this current administration. And I'm sure that's what you talked about in terms of that fallout. Of course, naturally, an administration is made up of a team. And so he did acknowledge that, yes, there have been some challenges, but then his views cannot override any other views that go on. It's a collective decision, and that was made. One of the distinctive things that you realize about his speech was that it was very nationalistic in terms of the outlook. This wasn't the usual partisan speech that we looked out that we probably would have seen. This was not a politically colored speech. You could see that he actually did speak to the people of Ghana and try to make the case. He used the metaphor of him going for a job. And before you go for the job, you show what you have done and then what you hope to do in the future. So in terms of the outcome of that particular speech, I think he put himself exactly where he needs to be. He did distinguish himself by saying that he would also cut back on some policies of the current administration. So he did try to distinguish himself that way. Of course, not everybody buys that, but he has made his case and he has stated it. And I believe that we just wait to see how the rest of the campaign will pan out.
There are those who have the view that the fact that he distanced himself from, especially some of the tax measures introduced by this administration, which is part of his number 2 very powerful position, he cannot take himself out. He should be part of the blame. Now, there's someone who says that if I'm elected, this is what I would do. If this is still on the books, I will take them out.
Right.
You are part of the administration.
Right.
And they say that in itself doesn't present somebody who is very loyal to his values, because if things were done and you didn't like it, the obvious thing you should have done would have been to step away from the mess and say that I cannot be part of a system that is seeking to impoverish Ghanaians. But you stayed with it. And because you want power, you are portraying yourself as somebody who wanted the best for you, but I couldn't do it because I was under somebody's direction.
Yeah, but you see, it's teamwork and there's collective responsibility. I do not think that in an organization that we belong to, anytime that decisions do not go in our favor, I don't think we step away all the time. And of course, even in newsrooms, in different organizations, there are always debates. There are always debates internally. But once decisions are made, there's that expectation that you would be a good team player. And so you can look at it in another way. In terms of leadership, he has been a very dependable assistant. He has been a very committed assistant in terms of what he was expected to do. But there's one key thing about the position of the vice presidency is that, yes, you did make the point that it was a powerful position, but we need to appreciate the paradox of this particular position. There's one scholar who said one thing. He said the highest, most important position in any government or in any country is the president.
Right.
And the next highest is the vice president. But the lowest position is also the vice president. Why is that so? Because they were just trying to speak to the point that, yes, ceremonially and traditionally, or in terms of the bureaucracy, symbolically, that's the number 2. But then in practice, the vice presidency, as we've always known it, has been a position has been one that has had a very limited role. Also, don't forget that it's been a very traditional, maybe symbolic role sometimes. And so there is an extent to which power can be exercised
by the vice president. Eventually under the direction of the president.
Yes, and the literature, the scholarly literature points to it. There's another scholar who said one thing. He said that the role and the position or the activities of the vice president is only limited to the extent to which the existing president empowers him. And the vice presidency is what the occupant makes of it. There were so many times in history, not just in Ghana, in democracies, that a lot of people refused to take up that position of VP-ship because they felt as though it was just a
ceremonial position.
Yes, a place-holding position. But starting from McGovern, that was Walter Mondale, who was the vice president to Jimmy Carter. He did what I believe Dr. Bawumia is doing historically in Ghana now. He decided to be a more involved, a more engaged, a more activist vice president who was very, very much a part of what was going on. And Dr. Bawumia decided to do that. You see,
isn't this also because the current president has given him that freedom and flexibility to bring about what he thinks can help to, in terms of governing and managing the country? Isn't it because of that?
Yeah, so it goes both ways. People give Carter the credit for not suppressing the VP-ship. In the same way, we had this model of a policy-driven one, advocate VP, who Dr. Bawumia has been. And so he decided to hinge that space on digitization. believing that digitalization was going to be that catalytic tool or that enabler that will be able to propel this country into industrial growth, or that will help to improve lives or bring about operational efficiency or optimization and bring increased revenue or increased growth. That was the basis upon which Vice President Bamwa has staked his advocacy role. And that is something that we can use to characterize him during his term in governance. And so when he stood there to speak, one of the major visions or frames that he talked about was how digitalization was going to be an enabler to improve our lives in so many ways and in so many disciplines.
We'll talk about, if any at all, what the opposition can use to dent the image of the vice president going into 2024. But again, let's do a little bit, maybe a last question, on the importance of the office of the vice president. Yes. I'm asking this question based on what Bawumia himself did when the NDC was in power, when he asked the late Mr. Atta 170 questions.
Right.
I'm sure he did so because he realized that Mr. Atta was the vice president and head of the economic management team and virtually in charge of our economy. So the questions that bordered on economy, 170 of them, he wanted Mr. Atta to respond to those questions. And yet, today we are being told that, EMT is just an advisory role, and so for that matter, don't place too much premium on the role of the vice president. This is somebody who wanted a certain vice president to respond to questions that bordered on what he considered to be the decline of the Ghanaian economy.
Yeah, so every campaign and every event takes place within a particular context. Vice President Maisata, God bless his soul, the late Vice President, had all the chance in the world to respond the way he wanted to. And you correct me if I'm wrong, I believe he ignored it, or he didn't really answer it. And that was the approach that he decided to use. You know, in politics, just like in any other thing in life, they say nature abhors a gap. And sometimes when there is a gap, people decide to fill it up with whatever they wanted to. And during that campaign, there was a lot of things that people used to fill the gap. I mean, there are a lot of narratives and things were said. And so he was the master of his image, he was a master of his frame, and that's the line he decided to toe. This current vice president has decided that he's going to fill that vacuum, or this is how he is going to present his case. And I believe that, of course, it's left to the people of Ghana to make that decision as to how much they're going to buy that. But at least this is the case he made. And he was very, very confident. He was very, very passionate. He was very energized in promulgating his case to the people of Ghana.
And how does this help him, knowing very well that he's coming up against a former vice president, a former president who is seeking to go a second term, and of course also against a former trade minister who is running as an independent candidate? How does this help him? Does this present him as a very credible, trustworthy individual? How does it help him?
Yes, it's going to be a really, really interesting election. There haven't been a lot of times in Ghana or in any other democracy when we've had a scenario like this. Interesting enough, this is going to be a very big year for democracy in Ghana and across the world. There are about no less than 20 different kind of elections taking place in various countries. Taiwan has already had it, starting from, Hong Kong from January. In the United States, we also have a very big election coming in November. And Donald Trump is a former one-term president who is also seeking to come back to run against and finish his term. So it's a very interesting scenario, and it just depends on the kind of message that each of them decide to stick forward. Because at the end of the day, we have a former president who has a record to run on. We have a vice president who, it's not quite the same. He doesn't have a presidential record to run on. And I believe maybe that's the message he was trying to send across. Because at the end of the day, the history book recorded as the Akufo-Addo administration. It's always the Reagan administration, the Clinton administration. It's the Akufo-Addo administration. We do have a Mahama administration. We don't have a Baumia administration. So there, although we also have to admit at the same time that it is not he's not a complete outsider, because he's also a VP. So we need to admit that.
And I guess he will also be running on the achievements of this administration.
Exactly. So we can't run away from it. But I'm just saying that it's going to be a very interesting dynamic to have that first-time president, one-time president with a record coming back again, and then to see a VP who has been very, very vocal also coming up again. So that's what democracy is supposed to be. It's supposed to be a very exciting contest, a marketplace of ideas, a contest on ideals, on values, on policy, and not fist fights or combats or violence. That is the beauty of democracy. That is who Ghana has always been. And I hope that this election will be a good advertisement for democracy in our nation and also for the African continent.
And what do you consider to be what will influence people's vote? Is it really going to be just the economy, or other factors may come to play?
Yeah, good question. Of course, the economy is always going to be front and center. People's pockets are always going to be a huge determinant. Bread and butter issues always going to be a very huge determinant as to how people vote. But then when you look at political campaigns, there are so many things apart from that which determine. One is the competency of the candidate. Others have to do with the character of the candidate, the experience of the candidate's own political disposition, their understanding of the issues, their ability to define the major problems of the day, their ability to connect with the people. And that is why in that speech that the Vice President made, one of the major frames, if you look at the speech, is the reduction in the cost of living. Right. And that was to define what the problems of Ghana are. Does he understand what the problems are? And one of it that he identified was the cost of living. And he decided to come up with certain policies that he felt, from transportation, the cost of power, and the cost of fuel, and food security, other things that he felt would help to address or reduce that particular cost of living. People also look at, when I talk about character, they look at the values.
Just a little bit on the economy. If the economy is really going to be the deciding factor, then clearly the record of the two parties will come to play. The NDC, let's say from 2208 up until 2016, and then what the MPP gave us from 2017 up until now. If the figures is anything to go by, then it's really going to be a tough call for the MPP to try and convince Ghanaians that they are the best managers of the economy. Okay, so
I didn't say it was the most important one. And remember that I'm not an economist.
Of course.
When I look at the speech, I do a qualitative analysis of the speech. I do a textual analysis of the speech, and I do a communicative analysis of the speech to find out what are the broad arguments, what are the broad themes, and what are the broad values. So I didn't say it was the most important. I'm just saying that there are other things as well. Right. That was just the first. I was getting into the others. So when you look at the composure and the character of a candidate, I remember when Obama was elected president, one of the major reasons people gave for voting him in, aside despite the fact that he was not an economic aficionado, was his judgment. He was not an economic person, but they said that they believed in Obama's sense of judgment. And so, those judgments is based on what the person thinks is the most important thing to move the country forward. So you look at the character of the Vice President, and you can see him as somebody who actually promulgates a culture of equality. Equality, you see, the thing about digitalization, and I think they probably haven't argued it enough, is that it is an enabler to equalize the access to healthcare, to equalize access to various services within the country. Because when those services are efficient, when blood is sent to the villages and other things, it bridges the gap between the haves and the have-nots. So it becomes an equalizer, an enabler for people's access to different services. And that is what he has hinged on. You look at when his work with the lepers, the compassion, the empathy that he has, and the humility that he uses, and he talked about that, and the respect that he has for authority. And so these are things that people might look up into and say, well, this is the kind of figure that we want as our president. So there are definitely different components and not just one.
So therefore, eventually, it may have to boil down to the character of the individual and who best the Ghanaian can trust.
Yes. The character of the individual, who best the Ghanaian can trust and who they feel a connection to. There are so many, the voters are not monolithic. There are so many types of voters. There are social issue voters, there are values voters, there are regional voters, there are political philosophy voters, and there are so many things that different people care about. So they are going to look at that, and based on what they see as the most important factor for them, the youth, for instance.
Right.
There are so many things that the youth think about. For young people, technology is such a big deal.
Absolutely.
And so a young person can sit down and say, you know what, I may not get a government job, but I want a country in which there's quantum electronics, there is robotics, there is access to STEM education,
right,
so that I can, digitalization is the cornerstone. So if they see the technology as helping to promote their entrepreneurial work online, for instance, they feel they can use technology to be able to make money or make their own business
on the internet.
Yes. So I'm saying that different people, demography and other things, will look at that and make a decision on what they think is most important to them at any particular time.
So what is the motivation behind this book?
Well, so we haven't had a lot of documentation, a lot of historical documentation of most of our institutions, especially when it comes to the executive.
Right.
There's the presidency, there's the vice presidency, there are ministers and different arms of executive governance. We've not had a point in time when we've sat down to reflect on the institution of the vice presidency, although it is growing in power and growing in stature. We haven't had the time to sit back and reflect on that institution and how we can make it more efficient or more useful in our governance. So I decided to use him as a case study to look at his period within this administration and the kind of impact or transformation that he has had on the vice presidency and how that can spur a debate as to how to make the office more useful and more impactful as Ghanaians.
Is this solely about Dr. Bawumia or others, the role of others also?
So this is a case study, so I focus on one person for
Dr.
now.
Bawumia.
Maybe in the future we'll go on to others.
And when is the launch?
In March, hopefully and I don't want to give dates, but there are a lot of plans going on. So hopefully very soon.
All right. Thank you very much, Doctor, for coming, Dr. H.C. Kanku.
Thank you so much.
And the book about the
Dr. Bawumia, the modern vice president. That's the title.
Right. So that is the book on your screens, Dr. Bawumia and the modern vice president in Ghana, and the launch is coming up in March, and I'm sure that we'll have a lot more to chew on once we have it. So this is a pause here on Joy News. My name is Elton Bob. We'll take a short break. We'll be back. We are back, and about 10,000 victims of the spillage of the Konsombo Dam in the Northtown constituency are still living in tents and other makeshift structures 5 months after the devastating flooding. This is according to the Member of Parliament for the area, Samuel Okujeto Ablakwa, who has facilitated the construction of 2 alternative housing schemes to house up to 600 people, but says a lot more help is required. Former President John Mahama, who is backing the parliamentary probe into the spillage, says government has been insensitive to the plight of the victims. Kwaku Asante has the rest of the story from Mape.
It's been 5 months since the floodgates of the Akosombo Dam was opened, leaving in its wake devastation never seen in decades. So many people reduced to living in tents with their entire livelihoods wiped off. With the water now receded and the people trying to build back their lives, so much help is still needed. For now, the focus of MP for Northtown, one of the worst affected constituencies, Samuel Okujeto Ablakwa and his partner, is to relocate as many of the victims as possible and resettle them in decent accommodations. The MP has now opened the second alternative housing project to house at least 300 families.
We have been able to mobilize those resources and put together this second housing project, which we are calling the Northtown MP and Partners Safe Alternative Housing Initiative. From tonight, 300 people who are living in refugee-like tents in Dagome, in Agbetiko, in Aveime, in Dofadidoma, in Fojoku. From tonight, they can have access to decent, modern accommodation, and they can have their dignity restored.
The MP says it is unacceptable that government is failing to live up to its responsibilities.
Waiting for the central government to commence the construction of resettlement homes. How long are people going to be living like refugees in their own country, in their own hometown? How long? How long are we going to be living in tents? Very soon, the rainy season will be upon us. Those tents cannot save us. So His Excellency Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo and Vice President Alhaji Mahmudu Bawumia remember your oath of office.
Former President John Dramani Mahama, who is backing the parliamentary probe into the spillage of the Akosombo Dam, is also accusing government of turning a blind eye to the plight of the victims.
I urge the Speaker of Parliament, after he ruled that there should be a public inquiry, I urge him to go ahead and set up the committee, so that a bipartisan committee, so that it can hold a public inquiry. This inquiry must be televised so that the whole of Ghana can see it transparently, in order that we know exactly what happened, so that it will not be repeated again. Let me appeal to the President, Nana Akufo-Addo, and his Vice President, Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, to be more responsive and sensitive to the plight of the victims of the Akosombo Dam spillage, and immediately get to work to commence resettling victims. The insensitivity of government to the plight of these victims is unacceptable.
Chiefs in the area are helpless and furious.
The Volta Regional House of Chiefs is calling on government and VRA for a complete resettlement of the impacted communities that have suffered as a result of what VRA is.
More than 10,000 persons still have to be relocated to be moved away from shelters like these, which have been described as inhumane.
The main challenge we have now is accommodation. Like, we need proper structure. The tent, if you enter in the morning, you feel comfortable. But during the afternoon, there's so much heat, so you can't even stay in it. Yes, and even if it rained, last time it rained, the whole place was so disorganized.
But at least while these people wait for their government to come to their aid after budgeting more than 200 million cedis, Samuel Okudzeto Blackwell and his partners are doing their bit to help ameliorate the suffering of the people and put them back to living decent lives. Reporting for Joy News, Kweku Asante, Mepe, North Tong, Volta Region.
And then also to another very disturbing story, because the culture of teenage girls trading sex for fish in coastal communities of Hafasini in the General District of the Western Region is a commonplace. The girls beg for fish during substantial catch and return sexual favor as payment to the fishermen. It is termed fish for sex in the local community. Joy News' Lee Blewu was there to dig into this worrying culture and has come through with this report.
Hafasini is one of 26 coastal communities in the Jomo municipality of the Western region with prevalent teenage sexual exploitation. Its vibrant shore attracts loads of town folks daily when canoes that go for fishing expeditions land ashore. On occasions where the fishermen have a substantial catch, teenage girls who come to the beach to beg for fish for their families' upkeep become the target of sexual exploitation, as every fish they receive from the fishermen is paid back through sex. As a result, teenage pregnancy and single parenthood are a common phenomenon in the community, with little being done by local stakeholders to address the situation. The practice is termed by indigenes as fish for sex, and this is confirmed by the Deputy Manager of the Jomara Fisheries Commission, Irene.
The girls are young, so the fishermen take advantage of the situation and have sex with them. Fish for sex is prevalent here.
The barter sex trade is fueled largely by poverty and parental neglect. Semenya Maxwell, a fisherman with more than a decade fishing experience, opens up on the level of exploitation.
Everybody will be struggling for the fish, so if you can assess the one who is there and he's also giving you, and he also has something, but means you also give you fish, give me sex, give you fish, give me barter system. That way.
According to Maxwell, married women committing infidelity for favors of fish gifts coexist in the community. At the Anlong line, a set of fishermen have returned from a fishing in their catch. Ashura, a 17-year-old single parent and a victim of sexual exploitation, is among people who have come to the London beach. She explains what she uses the fish she receives from the men for.
He has been bringing the fish home when we started dating. I sell some and use the rest to prepare dish for the family.
Adra was forced to end the relationship with her child's father after accusing him of using fish to lure other teenage girls.
We broke up because he cheated.
Comfort, a shore laborer, recounted how she influenced a friend to exchange sex for fish.
A fisherman expressed interest in my friend, so anytime I come to the shore, he gives me octopus and other big fishes to give to her. When he needs her to, he tells me to convey the message to my friend to meet him.
Education of the victims of the community sexual exploitation is abruptly truncated once pregnancy sets in.
I called one girl and she was like, Madam, my mother, whenever you ask her for anything, she will tell you she's not having. So the only thing that I could do, I have a guy, I think the guy also works at the seashore, so he's the guy helping her at school. The only thing she can also offer to the guy is to give herself to the guy. Seriously, and when I came, I think almost 4 girls or so, they have dropped out because of teenage pregnancy and other stuff.
Wanda, a native of Brekusu in the Kwepem South District of the Eastern Region, has migrated to Havasne to pursue fishing. He is one of the fishermen who engages in the fish for sex trade, admitting to having sexual intercourse with multiple teenage girls, including the mother of his children.
For us fishermen, we lure girls with fish, nothing else. When you offer the girl fish, you have influenced her mind and she will continue to offer you sex because she knows that if she stops, she won't get the fish again.
In the heart of teenage girls in the community is a competition among the fishermen as these girls give in to the highest bidder. This was corroborated by Wanda.
There are some fishermen with elevated status in the community. The fish that they can give to the girls, you cannot afford. So your girlfriend can break up with you for them.
But why do the fishermen do what they do? A deputy chief fisherman, Nana Boka, attempted an explanation.
The girls like fish, that is why they keep begging for it. If they are scared of the consequences, they wouldn't be begging. If I give you fish and I also need a favor from you, I'll call you, I'll then have sex with you and you will feel relieved.
In Havasne, cases of sexual exploitation are not frequently reported to the police. Data from the Jomara Divisional Police Command show only 3 reported cases in the last 4 years. Jomara Municipal Chief Executive Louis Ade is overwhelmed about the increasing trend.
Who are those getting the girls pregnant? These are elderly men living in our communities. And you'll be surprised that a girl of 15 years is being chased by a 45-year-old man who is married married with children, and his children are even of the same age with that small girl, and that small girl has become his mistress, and they get them pregnant. And when the education service comes in, our parents will go behind us and they will go and collect a token and say, okay, let the girl be, because she gives birth. Who is going to take care of that girl?
Protecting the rights of girls, clamping down on the sex barter trade by fishermen in coastal communities requires the state's critical intervention. Stanley Need Blevels report read to you.
Very disturbing story out there, and I'm sure in the days to come we'll probe more into this fish for sex, situation, especially in the coastal areas. But from fish for sex, let's look at schools and the trees, because kindergarten pupils at Onwe Basic School in the Joseph municipality of the Ashanti region have been studying under trees for the past 4 years due to limited classrooms. Concerned residents say the open learning space for KG1 and KG2 pupils negatively impacts their education, as the children are distracted by moving vehicles and reptiles. There is more in this report.
Speaking to join the residents of Onye said the pupils veranda of the basic school or are sent home when the clouds gather. The local authorities have been made, but there is no intervention yet.
It's been long. I can count almost 4 years. They have sat under the tree for long. The old and new students have all been under the tree.
Aside from the kindergarten learning under the tree, the lack of electricity in the school has hindered the learning of ICT. Teachers at the Onye MA Junior High School, too, also have their staff common room under a tree. According to some of the tutors, they have had to take shelter under the trees over a decade.
Our classrooms have galleys, and it gets worse when it rains. We don't even have computers.
Construction of a building intended to accommodate people are stalled. The recently elected assemblyman of Abuenim, Odaho, and Onye electoral area, Hakim Mohammed, says he has started engagements to improve the situation. What worries me the most are the kids under the tree. I have engaged the Onye chief. They need funds. Reporting for J News, Clinton Yabwa.
And that's a wrap for today's edition of The Pulse here on Joy News. My name is Elton Brobe. For more stories, log on to our website, myjoyonline.com. You have a lovely evening.